Welcome to the stage, Gainsight's Chief Strategist of Pulse Programs, Ruben Rabago.
Woo! Good morning. Awesome. Congratulate yourselves for coming back and for attending this session. Of all the sessions you could have attended, let me tell you a secret. This one was rated the #1 session from last year. It's CSM Time Mastery. No pressure, Nils. He has worked really hard to keep that status this year. I am really excited, #1, to be part and listen to this session. But #2, for all of you to continue to stay engaged. Remember, Slido will continue to be up and running throughout this session and throughout all the sessions today. You can find it by going to slido.com or go to the Pulse app. You'll find it there, and the room that we're in is Coachella. Let me tell you a little bit about Nils. CS consumes this guy. He has lived in the trenches as a CSM, as a director, as a leader of teams. In fact, he actually started, I think, one of the very first consultancy firms focused on customer success called Glide Consulting. He is now the vice president of customer success for Raintree QA. Help me give a warm welcome. He's high energy. He expects it from all of us. Nils Vignier. Get it, buddy.
Thank you, Ruben. Good morning, everyone. Nils Vignier here, so excited to be here. Thank you, Ruben, for that wonderful intro. 6 years ago, I was in the audience at the very first Pulse in San Francisco, the round table, 300 people that Nick was talking about yesterday. And it was, I was an individual contributor. I was a CSM. I had just gotten into the role 12 months beforehand. Absolutely was having a blast and loved it. And I knew there was something great about CS period, and have been so fortunate to have ridden the wave from that point all the way to now. Right? So as Ruben was mentioning, I've been a CSM. I've been a team lead. I've been a director. I've been a VP. I went off and started my own consulting firm. Ran that for 3 years, worked with some of the best in SaaS to help them build world-class customer success teams. It was just infinitely fun. And now I'm back in the seat as a VP of CS at Rainforest QA, where we're bringing QA into the era of continuous delivery. Right. So first up, I want you guys to be able to take away all the crispy tactical things that I have to say today. However, I have a very visual presentation. So in order to enable you to get the goodness that I want you to walk away with, here's a link to the ultimate guide to CSM Time Mastery. It's a bit.ly link, bit.ly/CSM Time Mastery. Pretty straightforward. You can download the guide, follow along as I go through this, because there's a lot of good stuff, and I want you to walk away with everything, and not everything is going to be on a slide. So I'm going to start with a question, and this is going to be our first Slido poll. So I want you to go to Slido as well and get this ready. Here's the question. What would you do with 10% of your time back every single week? Think about this for a second. What would you do with 10% of your time back every single week? And this is going to be in a word cloud, so we're going to see this on the board, and we're going to see what a few thousand people think and would do of your peers. All right? So would this involve family? Would this involve work? Sleep! I like it. Network, automate, give back to the community, strategic planning, love it. Relax, read, travel, family, coming up time, sleep coming up even higher, right? I love watching this change, it's awesome. Exercise, strategic planning, right. So you can all see there's some common themes there. Here's what I do with 10% of my time back every week. This is me and my 2 sons, Henrik and Lars, on the very top of Mount Bachelor. So I live in Bend, Oregon. I was a longtime Bay Area resident, up and moved to Bend 3 years ago to build the quality of life and build the life I wanted. It coincided with my consulting, and now I still live there even as VP of CS. Right? So 10% of my time every week means a lot to me. Family, which was highlighted as the #1 thing in our Slido poll there, is close, near and dear to my heart. Right? And this is what I do with it. So there's a big problem with time mastery in customer success. And today, we're going to talk about the why, then we're going to talk about the how. And I got to warn you, I'm going to be brutally honest. There's some things that I'm going to say that you might not want to hear, or you might not even agree with. That's okay. I've coached hundreds of people through time mastery and programs to help them gain 10% of their time back every single week. Right? I've heard it all virtually and seen it all. And my goal is to help you grow. That's why I'm here. That's why I was here last year. That's why I'm here this year. Right? So there's a big problem whether you're a CSM, a manager or director, or a VP. And there's a huge impact with these in each of these categories, and I'm going to take you through that. So the first up, as a CSM, if you're an individual contributor on the front lines working with clients, if you do not master your time, you will be in a firefighting mode, right? You have very little control over your day-to-day. You bounce from one fire to the next. You notice that fires probably don't really go out, period, right? They kind of smolder, and then a little burst of wind comes through, and poof, before you know it, you got a full raging inferno again. So if at the CSM level, and when working with your accounts, when working with your customers, and working internally, you don't master your time, this is the problem. But what's the real impact of this? The real impact is that you're psychic. You have no predictability in your book of business. Whether or not you call it a book of business, all I'm referring to here is the accounts you are responsible for. However you're comped and measured, I don't care here. The accounts you are responsible for, that is your book of business in this example. And if you have no predictability in your book of business, you're a psychic. Whether or not they renew, I don't know. Just kind of stick a finger in the air and try to guess, right? And this all comes back to mastering your time, not mastering your time. So let's take that a step further and say if it's fair to assume that the rest of your team operates in a similar fashion, which is usually the case, then they also have no predictability in their book of business. So what's the impact of that? Well, if you don't have any predictability and your team doesn't have any predictability, you guys are responsible for all the existing ARR in your customer base. So therefore, your company does not have predictability in its book of business. That's a massive problem, considering that the value of any SaaS business is built on how predictable the renewals and expansions are. Right? So you see how what seemingly starts out as a small CSM time mastery problem actually cascades all the way up to a company level problem. Now let's go on to the manager or director. So if you're in this role, you're managing a team, you probably have at least several CSMs and all the way up to large numbers, right? If you do not master your time as a manager or director in CS, you will jump on every call, support people all the time, right? Put out the fires for them, because you can swoop in and be the hero and kind of like this little ninja guy I got here on the side. Handle the hard conversations for them, because that's what you're there to do, right? You're really there to help make sure this stuff works. But what's the real impact of playing in that role when you don't master your time and you have other people you're responsible for? You are a single point of failure, which means that if this keystone and this arch were removed, the whole thing would collapse. In your teams, this is the role you're playing. And if you were removed for some reason, your team would not operate in the same way. Would it completely crumble? Maybe not. But it would not be able to operate in the same way. Right? That has a massive impact on the business as a whole. So again, small time mastery problem, massive business impact. Now, let's look at the VP level. So this is the highest level, VP, or you could even do CCO here. If you do not master your time as a VP, I'll totally bring myself in this picture too. If you do not master your time as a VP, you will only focus on what is directly in front of you. You're going to address the problems of today, because that's the fires that are immediately sitting right here, right? And you're not going to see the forest. We've all heard the cliche, you can't see the forest for the trees, right? But what's the real impact of this at a VP level? The real impact? You're fired. And I'm completely serious here. Nick yesterday was showing the curve, the average life cycle of a VP of CS and a CS leader, and kind of how it was trending. And he said about 2 years and the people leave, I actually think it's probably closer to 18 months, and most of them get fired. Largely because of this. You know what the number one thing is they say when this happens and you're fired is he or she just, quote, wasn't strategic enough. Right? Whereas when you're in the seat, it felt like that was what you had to do, was solve every problem that was right in front of you for that day. But there's a much greater problem here, and as you can see, time mastery is the core of all of these things that have vast cascading effects down the line. So I wanted to hit you with why this is so important. Well, I've dedicated a significant part of my life to try to figure this out and help others in the CS community do this as well. Because we have one of the hardest jobs as a result of having so many different bosses, right? We've got our customers. We have internal teams. We don't even own anything. We own an outcome, but we have to influence other people. So when you're responsible for interacting with that many people, how can you think about time? You just have to get it all done. That's what we're going to talk through, specific strategies on how to take control today. So we all know conceptually these are not good behaviors. Like, yeah, sure, Nils, that makes total sense. Like, that's stupid. I don't want to get fired. Great. Why don't we change? Why don't we change? Change ultimately is hard, right? Change sucks. But in this particular time mastery case, in this particular space of CS, why we don't change, the real reason is because we feel significant. We feel significant when we are called upon to swoop in and save the day and handle situations and put out fires, and that meets a fundamental core human need called significance, which is inside of all of us. We all have the need to feel special. We all have the need to feel unique and feel like we're the only ones that could do X, Y, or Z, right? But you also have the ability to define how you meet your need for significance, right? Significance is something that is a construct in our minds. If you do not define how you meet your need for significance, then a vacuum is created and anything that comes in, like a fire, will immediately get swept up into that, and that's why you will gravitate towards that behavior and continue in that pattern until something drastic happens, like you get fired, right? It becomes addictive. So you have to be really honest with yourself about how you feel when you fight these fires. You usually get a little high from it, and granted, I've felt this too, right? You're the only one who could save the day. You get a lot of accolades. Oh, they turned that churn into a renewal, and it was down to the last wire, and we finally wrestled it over the line, right? That's a huge significance boost, but it's not helpful to the business. It's not helpful to you. That is a single moment in time that will not happen again. So our next exercise, you're going to talk with a neighbor next to you, either left or right, doesn't matter. And I want you to fill in the blank here for me and just have a discussion, just two people, or three, it's fine. I feel significant when. And it could be personal or professional. When I fight fires, totally fine, right? I feel significant when I lead my team. I feel significant when I spend time with my family, whatever. Or when someone tells me I do a great job. Just, a couple examples there. So I'm going to give you 1 minute. I want you to talk to the person next to you, either way, and fill in that blank. I feel significant when. I'll tell you when you have 30 seconds. You can switch or just have a conversation. Ready, go. Aaron, right here. Yeah, you two right there. Connect. All right, got 30 seconds. All right, 10 seconds left, guys. And let's bring it back. All right. Thank you for partaking in that little exercise. Hopefully, if you knew the person next to you, you got to know them a little bit better. And if you didn't know them, then there's a good conversation topic. Cocktail party intros is a great icebreaker. Trust me. Okay, so a couple things, observations that I've gotten through this that I want to make you aware of. And there's can be an internal focus in these situations or more of an external focus. So, give you an example. I feel significant when my boss tells me I do a good job. That is an externally focused feeling, right? I have to wait until somebody else does something for me to feel significant. The internal focus of that shifted version is I feel significant when I know I've done a good job. The difference is you're in 100% control of exactly what you want to feel and when. So if significance is one of the core fundamental human needs, as I was saying, if we abdicate control to someone else and wait for other people to do an action to help to make us feel significant, guess what? We're always going to be disappointed. You're never going to feel significant because you're always waiting for somebody else to do something, and they have no idea what you're waiting for them to do because nobody's ever going to talk about this, right? So here's a couple examples of how I meet my need for significance and why this is more important to me than fighting fires with my team. This is my family, the entire thing, right? So I got my beautiful wife, Annie. I have my oldest daughter, Sinva, middle son, Henrik, and youngest son, Lars there. And this is one of our favorite spots in Bend, just a short hike from our house. I've derived tremendous amount of significance from being a father and a husband in the manner in which I've defined, right? How the family interacts, incredibly important to me, but I'm in control of that 100% of the time, right? I feel significant because I have a mustache, right? It just happens to be the best mustache in CS, let's say that. I'll admit it was a self-appointed title, but I haven't had anybody refute it yet, so I'm going to stick with it, right? I have a mustache. It is unique. It makes me feel special. People recognize me solely because of my mustache. I've been skiing at Mount Bachelor, full storm gear, helmet, goggles, the whole thing. You can barely see anything on my face. People still pick me out of the line and say, Nils, how you doing? And I have no idea where that came from, but they saw the mustache, right? That's how I meet my need for significance. Last year, this was me on the Pulse stage, right here, right? Now, I was rated the #1 presenter at the conference, which was a phenomenal achievement and hugely gratifying. I had no idea that was even a thing, right? But I derived my significance from creating a presentation that I knew would make an impact on other people. Again, I was in control. I did not have to win the Best Presenter award to feel significant. I kept control. So, as I looked at last year's presentation and last year's approach, and I thought about this year, I ripped the whole thing up. Right? I had to start from scratch. And what I realized was that last year I presented a big solution to a big problem in 45 minutes and assumed that a lot of people would change. And there was probably a decent amount of change that happened, right? But change is hard, like we were talking about before. So my approach this year has been much more focused on growth, right? Change is hard, growth is fun. Change sucks, growth is good. And look at the word growth and how it's used in our everyday vernacular in our SaaS businesses. Growth is what it's all about. Nobody ever talks about change. When they talk about change management, they usually associate it with very large organizations and very difficult things over long periods of time. That's not fun. Growing is fun. So I'm going to take you through a beginner, intermediate, and advanced approach to time mastery. This is the how. This is the tactics that are in the guide that we're going to work through. And I want you to just self-select into whichever area is appropriate for how you operate today and pick up just one thing. Pick up one thing that would help you get closer to that 10% of your time back each week. Because whether you work, there's probably nobody in here who works 40 hours, but 40, 50, 60, 70 hours a week, that's a lot of hours when you're talking 10%, right? 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 hours, that's an entire day, right? Get back to that family piece like you guys said was most important. Okay. So, at the beginner level, right, and beginner is just a label, it's the starting point. There's no shame in being in this level. I oscillate, and some days I'm back in this category, and some days I'm at the advanced level. It's okay. Okay, 2 things on the tactics side. Number 1, you have to define who is in control. It's all about control. I'm gonna go into this deep here. Number 2, you have to master the river and use a valve. I'm gonna explain exactly what that means in a second. Let's talk about control first. Whether or not you are in control of your environment, which I define as your emails, your phone calls, your clients, your bosses, your customers, the entire world, basically, is completely up to you. If you think you're in control or you think you're out of control, you're right. It's just a choice. It's just a choice that you alone have the opportunity to make at any point in time. And this is the number one thing that people abdicate and let somebody else dictate their choice of control. My company has a culture of always being on Slack 24/7, so I have to be. No, you don't have to be. You made a choice to follow the standard of what other people did. But you didn't, you actually made a choice to operate in that manner, right? So the key is, number one, just stop. Who's in control? Answer the question. If your honest answer is, my environment will control me and I will be subjected to whatever comes at me, probably in the wrong session, right? It's probably not why you came here in the first place. But if you flip that around and say, you know what? I am solely responsible for every single thing that happens. I am in full control. That's where the change and the growth, that's where the growth starts to happen. Because then all these other pieces that I'm going to share with you are going to build on top of that, but you have to be in control. You cannot say, quote, this is the way my team does it, so I have to do it this way. No, this is the way my team does it, and I choose to follow my team. And say it out loud. Does it make sense? Because oftentimes when we say this stuff out loud, we realize just how silly it sounds. Okay, so that's the choice piece. Number two is email is a river. This is the single greatest plague and problem in customer success and time mastery, period, right? We're inundated with messages all day, every day, at night, especially if we had worldwide teams. Like, it never stops. It's a river. And sometimes that river overflows and it floods, right? And if you look back at rivers in early civilizations, they flooded too. Destroyed crops, entire groups of people had to move, huge impact, right? So what'd they do? They created valves to control the flow of the water. And they wanted to just harness the energy and just focus on some subset of that massive river at once, right? And that's exactly what this tactic is all about. And so if you visually think about email as the river, that frankly, it's never going to stop. You're never going to get to the end. So just accept it. But if you put in place a valve, then you have the ability to control it, and you are exerting control over your environment again. You're making it work for you instead of the other way around. So specific tactics to follow here. There's a wonderful tool called inboxpause.com. This is a Chrome extension. It's for Gmail. But if you use Outlook or you don't use Gmail, whatever, that's fine. The principle still applies. This open the valve 6 times a day. What this means is opening the valve with Inbox Pause allows you to get in the new set of messages since the last time you had opened the valve. So all the new messages are hidden from your view, so you can just focus on what's right in front of you at this point in time, which is critically important because here's what happens if you don't do that. You're composing a message, boom, 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 okay, I'm good, I'm good, I'm good. Then all of a sudden, a little black line pops up and you see, oh, crap, that's from that customer. I didn't get back to you yet. I meant to do that yesterday. Shoot, what happened? And you go click on the message and you read through real fast and you're like, oh my God, I should have gotten to this yesterday. What do I need to do? What do I need to do? Great, I need to talk to this person. I got to forward this email. Okay, forward the email. Add some context. Boom, 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 boom. Go through. Hit send. Oh, okay, take a breath. Let me go back to the email I was writing. And you come back and you have absolutely no idea what you were doing, right? This happens 100 times a day for all of us in the CS profession because there's so many different pieces that we're responsible for. So by opening and closing this valve 6 times a day, that's like every hour and a half. You can every message can sit there for an hour and a half without your immediate response. I guarantee you that because you do this already when you're involved in meetings with clients, you travel on a plane, you do anything where you can't sit there and have it open all the time. It's just part of the job, right? But we don't naturally impose, and we don't artificially impose that, which is what I'm saying you need to do. So if you open the valve 6 times a day, then you just focus on that those new emails that came in, and you will not be distracted by the rest of the new stuff that's going to keep coming in, the flood, right? Then, once you get comfortable with this, you can work down to 3 times a day. I oscillate between 3 and 4 times a day on the checking with Inbox Pause, right? And it is the only thing that allows me to keep my focus on just that new set of messages that I have to deal with, and once I deal with that, I know I have a break until the next time that I'm going to check my email. That allows me to put tons of energy into a concerted effort and be infinitely more efficient with email than I was before when I just have it open all day and respond to everything ad hoc, just one by one, and switch contexts probably 3,000 times a day. So if email is a river, Slack is like the never-ending tsunami. It's amazing how much stuff continuously comes through in Slack. Some of it appropriate, some of it not, some of it gifts, some of it business related, some easy questions, some hard questions. It's crazy, right? But we're going to get a 2-for-1 deal here, right? While there's no inbox pause for Slack, I'm sure there will be at some point, what you can do is the same approach on checking Slack and responding to messages that you do with email. So if you do it every hour and a half for the email, then pick a half hour later, 45 minutes later, and that could be your Slack checking time. Dedicate 15, 20 minutes. How much time do you really need if you were just to once every hour and a half scan through Slack, see if there was anything that required your attention, and respond to it? Chances are it's not that much, right? But the constant context switching and seeing that little bubble or the little notification blows away your productivity. Like, absolutely destroys it. And we're all victim of this because we feel like, since it's a on-demand thing and somebody technically is online, that they should answer this at this exact time. And that doesn't have to be the way it is. So that's the beginner level, right? Those core things, that's how you take control of the flood that is email and the tsunami that is Slack. And you can exert control over your environment. Take that one step at a time. Okay, that is a significant amount of growth if you did nothing but just implement inbox pause and check it 8 times a day. That's fine, right? But start with that because that is control. Okay, at the intermediate level, it's all about controlling your calendar. So this is building on. First piece was heavily on the email and the messaging. Next up is your calendar. And your calendar is your, what I like to call your command center. It's going to guide and control all the pieces of the puzzle of how you're going to work. So there's a couple parts of the calendar that you want to dig into. Number 1, first thing in the morning. iPhone is the predominant alarm clock for a vast majority of us, right? And it is so easy when you flip over that phone and it's 6 a.m. or 5:30 or whatever time you get up, and you see all the little red circle of how many messages are unread, right? And it's so easy to click on that and start, what do I need, what do I need, what do I need? Oh, crap, I got a big issue. I got to deal with this right now. Boom, 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 boom. Stop. Do not, if you do this today, cut it. Just cut it out, right? There is nothing good that comes from checking your email as the very first thing you do in the day. This has tremendous psychological effects, and it will take you down to the lowest level of productivity, and you'll be fighting fires from there on out because it's extremely difficult to go back up the chain as opposed to starting at the top and then going in deep, right? So first thing in the morning, ditch the checking the email piece. Right? Before checking your email, here's what I recommend. So you have a morning routine and you do whatever you do, and if you're going to get to when you get to the point of like, okay, now I'm ready to dig into my email, first, stop. Make a list. Before you even open it up, you can look at your calendar and answer the question, what are the most important things that I need to accomplish today? It's not a to-do list of everything you have to get done. What are the most important things that if I only got these things done today, that would be an excellent outcome for me, right? So the key here is that you're starting your day at the strategic level. If you start at the strategic level, you'll be far better off as you go into working through these things because they will be planted in your mind as, I have to accomplish these today, right? And this only takes like 3 minutes, maybe 1 minute. 5 minutes. You can do it the day before. Doesn't matter. Really simple, but you're in control of where you're starting. So if you check your email, you're down here at the lowest level, and you're going to be fighting fires and very not strategic. And if you start here and ask the question, what's the most important thing I need to accomplish today, or the 2 or 3 things, boom, here. Because what you don't want to have happen is you run like crazy all day long, and you get to the end of the day, and you say, wow, I was so busy, and I'm exhausted. But if somebody asked what you got done, you'd have a pretty hard time quantifying actually what you did. I was really busy. I just don't know what I really got done. The third piece here is on Calendly, right? So online calendars are wonderful because everybody can see your availability and you can see everybody else's. And they're terrible because everybody can see your availability and you can see everybody else's, right? Double-edged sword. So how do you exert control over your calendar when everybody can see it? Well, one tool that I love, and there's many of them out there, free, paid, whatever, is called Calendly.com. And Calendly allows you to set up specific time blocks that you want to show your availability to somebody else and allow them to book time with you. So what you're doing is taking control of your calendar and saying, I know how to best spend my time. These are the blocks when I'm going to be available for customer calls, internal meetings, et cetera, and I can send this link to these people so that they can self-select into what works for them. People love to choose based off of choice, and you eliminate the never-ending, are you available at 2? No, I can do 3. I can't do 3. Can you do 4? No, and it just endless back and forth that is massive waste of time. Right? So use Calendly as a way to publicize your calendar, but you stay in control because you're allowing people to book only at the times you want them to book. Okay, so that was the beginner and the intermediate. Now let's talk about the advanced. So, of course, it goes without saying that we're building on top of the first two. So once you have the beginner and the intermediate nailed, the advanced is all about owning your channels. Owning your channels. So the metaphor I like to use this is swimming pool. And imagine this scene. This picture here represents, and every single person in this picture represents something that is needed by you this week from your customers, internal teams, execs, emails, board, whatever it is. These are all demands on your time, right? And if you try to respond to these one-off, you're going to context switch about 8 million times, and you're going to feel exhausted, right? And you will not be successful trying to respond to every single one of these, period. Guarantee it. So what's the solution? How can you exert control over this kind of chaos environment which we all live in? Swim lanes. Swim lanes. So in coaching, we call this chunking. All we're trying to do is group similar things together so that they can be dealt with in a consistent fashion. Okay? Think of how you would take this group of people, and they probably have some similar asks, even though one's on this side of the pool, one's on this side of the pool, and put them into lanes that line up with their needs. Here's some examples. Escalations is a swim lane, right? Personal development if you're a CSM, team development if you're a manager or director, right? Forecasting, renewals, like account reviews. These are all lanes. And when something comes in to your inbox or a request comes from you, you need to assess what the request is, put it into its appropriate lane, and you will have time blocked on your calendar for each of these swim lanes so that it can be addressed in a session when you're focused on that topic, as opposed to trying to do 100 different things and hoping for the same result. I would do 10 things. I would much rather spend time in 10 areas on 100 things than spend time on 100 things individually, right? It's how our brains are wired, and when you know this, when you sit down and spend a little bit of time in one particular area, you know you can accomplish a tremendous amount, right? So the advanced piece is all about the alignment of your email, which comes in, a request comes in, your calendar, which has blocks for these swim lanes and the strategic things that you know you're going to have to handle every single week, and then appropriate bucketing them into there so that you can focus on them and ultimately accomplish what needs to get done in a fraction of the time as opposed to just dealing with them one-off. So next up, before we get to the Q&A, I want to hit on another Slido survey, so please pull out your Slido app. And based off of what I told you about beginner, intermediate, advanced, again, no shame in anything of where anybody is today. Nobody's ever going to know which one you select. Self-select on the survey which segment represents where you are today. Just today. And we'll have a poll up here. Here we go. All right, beginner, 55, 56, 37, advanced 11. All right. So good balance between beginner and intermediate. That's awesome. So for those in the intermediate and advanced, just I would recommend going back and reviewing your answer to the statement either I am in control or my environment is in control of me. Because even if you're using those tactics but you don't feel like you're in control, you're still leaving some things on the table there. And if you're at the beginner level, start there. Make the commitment, write it down. I am in control. I will take control. I am solely responsible for every single thing that happens to me. If I work on the nights and the weekends, that's up to me. I made the choice to do that. My company did not force that upon me. It is a choice. So I have two parting questions for you. Number one, what would you do with 10% of your time back every week? And number two, what would you do to get it? Lastly, here's the link to the bit.ly piece again, bit.ly/CSM Time Mastery. Get the ultimate guide. It's a one-pager, has all the tactics for beginner, intermediate, advanced. Download it, go through that, pick one thing, just one thing in the next week. Maybe it's Calendly, maybe it's inbox pause, maybe it's just making a decision to take control. Just pick one thing. Right? Because remember, it's not about change, it's about growth. Right? If you pick one thing and you experiment with it, that's growth, period. And as you experiment, target that 10%. And family was the number one thing that popped up on there. Right? Sleep, I know, was close behind, but family was there. So you're spend more time with your families. All right. Now we're going to hit Slido, the questions. We'll hit some Q&A. We got about 10 minutes for Q&A. So if you haven't done so already, drop in your questions. And we will dig right in there. If they could bring up the Slido, please. One of the most common ones I get, we'll start here. As a manager, how do you coach people who aren't good at time mastery? One, when this session is recorded, have them watch it. It's a good place to start, at least, right? I think you need to start with the basics. Start with the basics, right? And for me, the basics is in that question of control. Nothing else has to happen. It's just the answer to a question. Literally, your world will stay exactly the same. You just will have a different outlook on it. So ask them, who's in control? If they're kind of run around the chicken like a chicken with their head cut off, who's in control? And nobody ever wants to admit verbally that they're not in control, which is a really interesting thing. Inside, we'll totally let it happen. But if I was talking to my boss, the last thing I would want to do is admit that I'm not in control. But that's where I need to start. In your journey from CSM to VP, did you ever struggle with imposter syndrome? If so, how did you work past it? Yes, absolutely. That's a really, really good question. Kind of gets to the core of being vulnerable here. And absolutely. How I got past it was through belief in myself, right? Belief that I was in the right place at the right time, that I was having an impact on my team, as well as my organization, as well as the others, right? I stayed in control. I did not wait for somebody else to tell me that I was doing a good job. So if you struggle with imposter syndrome, right, ask yourself the question, like, who's asking the question? Is it you or is it somebody else? Because I guarantee you it's just living within your own head. How do you deal with customers who latch onto us as product experts? Often customers turn to me first with all their questions, and this can be a huge time sink. I agree 100%. This is a dangerous area to get sucked down. Okay, a couple things here. One, you got to take a step back and look at all of the types of requests that you are getting for the product expertise questions, right? And when I say take a step back, I mean get out of your office, and even if it's on a weekend, that's fine. If it's something, an hour outside during a lunchtime, nice day and wherever you work, right? And just spend time thinking about all the crap that you get questions from that you hate answering over and over and over again. And you're going to see a pattern of the types of requests that are made. And so the real thing you want to do here is identify one thing I could do in order to say something once and have many people hear it, or document something once and have many people read it, right? So that is once on the tactical side. On the expectation setting side, you got to be upfront with them about who needs to actually solve these problems. Are they correct that you should be the product expert, or should they actually be going to your help center? If they're going to help center, reset the expectation on where to get product help quickly and fast so that you are not the sole crutch of everything they do. How do you incorporate these changes if it doesn't align with expectations from leadership? That's a juicy one. And how many people in here, expectations don't line up with leadership a lot of times, right? Yeah. There's an element of this that exists, within the company period. There's always a culture thing. Like I was sharing before, I've heard countless times, we have a culture of this, we have a culture of this. I'm not even allowed to be out of the office for a period of time, even if I work better, right? So there's some things that just exist in an environment, and that's okay. But answering and knowing for certain how you work best to contribute at the highest level to yourself, your customers, and your company is more valuable than whatever the culture is of 24/7, 365. Because if you deliver the results and you operate in a manner that is more along the time mastery lines than what everybody else is doing, I guarantee you that will be noticed, right? You have to have the confidence that you're doing the right things. It comes back to the focus on you, the focus on control. I would say, master your time, deliver exceptional results, don't worry about the other pieces. How can I tell my customers, used to intermediate answers, that I can no longer respond to at the speed of light? Oh, when they're used to immediate answers, how can I tell them not to expect that? Good. So this is true across the board. If you've done that before, if they expect that, number one, realize that you set their expectations either expressly or implicitly by responding in that manner previously. So this is not just the result of how it was. You had a part in this, so take ownership of it. That's number one. Number two, you can always reset someone's expectation. Say, and this is best done over a phone conversation. Look, I know oftentimes I'm able to respond very quickly, but I have an increased account load this quarter, and I'm really trying to make sure that I deliver an exceptional level service to every single one of my clients. So I need you to know that sometimes there may be up to 2 or 3 hours before I can get back to you, because I want to get back to you with the single most helpful answer for you. When you say that to people, they say, cool, I understand. I wasn't expecting that, except you always did it. So then I began to expect it. How are you managing email lanes? Are you using software, labels, or folders? I like this one. So there's a great article published by HubSpot on how to get to inbox 0 once and for all. And it is the start of the structure to bucket emails into things to act on, things you're waiting for, and things to read. And in Gmail, you can set this up with multiple inboxes. It was a pretty cool trick. For the lanes piece, yes, labels are critical. And then there's various ways you can do it. Either using the labels, and then in the lanes time that you have on your calendar, going in and searching for those labels and working through that set of emails again, because the context is all the same. So highly recommend the labels. Also check out the HubSpot article. It's called How to Get to Inbox 0 Once and For All. How do you stick to your time management framework when executives tell you which customers you need to work with and why? You're still in control. You need to work with these customers. Cool. Who's in charge, though? It's you. I don't see much difference there between those two. If you want to send a follow-up, I'm happy to. But you need to work with certain customers, which you have to do anyways, and your time mastery framework is all about how you get the stuff done with your customers. Customers don't need to know how you operate and how you manage your day. That doesn't matter. What are the top 3 task management tools you recommend? We talked about Inbox Pause, talked about Calendly. Task management, sorry. Task management. I'm kind of, these ones I dabble in, so I experiment with lots of them. I would say, Todoist has been a great one. The simpler the better, honestly, right? Here's the simplest of simple, which I have used in the past. A Google Doc or a spreadsheet or whatever that has your lanes and a link to the email that comes in, or literally a checklist, and you just note things there. Evernote is great for that. Boom, 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 just to capture. Because all you're trying to do there is just capture, organize very briefly, and then when it's time to be in your lane, boom, you can attack all those things in that specific lane. How to stop yourself to do more by adding extra hours and still achieve your own targets, which is obviously high. So adding extra hours is not obviously the right thing to do. It's about efficiency. View yourself as an efficiency metric. How efficient are you? And rate yourself, how efficient are you at getting done what you need to get done in the time you have to do it. And if you're not efficient, which is where a lot of people are, that's fine. Focus on the growth, right? Because continuously adding extra hours will never stop, right? Your account load will always get heavier, your company will have more demands, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Thoughts on the psychology studies of notification bubbles? I hate them. It's not a very scientific study, but they're incredibly distracting, right? I assume you're referring to the email messages or Slack messages or whatever comes up in the corners. One, they're incredibly distracting for you because, again, it's context switching. If you're focused on something and you see a notification, you can't unsee it, right? If you know it's an urgent email from a customer, you can't unsee that notification, and that automatically takes energy away from what you were doing and going to make you less efficient. Do you have any recommendations for Todoist apps that better enable time productivity? Happy to follow up with you later. If you downloaded the thing, send me a note because I sent an email follow up with the link on that. I'm a CS director, but also own 70 of our top accounts. It's a tough balance, dude. I agree 100%. Should directors own accounts at all? Depends on the size of your team, I think. There is an element of being a player and a coach that is valuable, which is you're still so close to it and have to do it, and you have to coach other people how to do it. However, 70 of your top accounts and managing a team, in my opinion, no, that's not an appropriate balance. Like, you're going to be far better off focusing on one or the other. All right, last question. What's the expected response time for emails that you hold your team to? I don't have an expectation on that. I trust each and every CSM to respond in the appropriate manner with this kind of methodology around, right? They know their customers far better than I do. We talk about the fact that we have to acknowledge that people are going to ask for stuff from us all the time, but they also own a significant book of business, and it's up to them to decide. So that's the end of my talk. Thank you so much. And Ruben is going to come out and join me again for an announcement of what's coming next.
Give it up for Nils one more time.
Thank you, thank you, thank you.
Dude, fantastic.
Thanks. Appreciate it.
Awesome. All right, I'm going to encourage you to come back here and spread the word. The next session, I understand, is a great debate. It's going to have some actual boxing involved. So that's all I can tell you at this point. So a debate with boxing, just think about that. Back here, 1 p.m., suggest sooner. Have a great lunch. Thank you.